And I blew the intro. We'll try this again. And there it goes. Okay, that was better. Hit the wrong button when I started. But hey, everybody, we're here. It's a cool, refreshing 98 degrees today. I don't even know where the humidity's at. What was that? Moonlight Gathering. Yeah, I got a call from Jack Tucker up there, who has met Jason Fritz. So there you go. And there's Steve, and there's Tony, there's Scott, there's Robert, there's Larry, there's Glenn, there's Ken, and David. So the Moonlight guys are up there doing whatever. They missed the rain, man. We got a big storm, big thunder and lightning storm, and got a bunch of rain dumped on us. So it was kind of nice. Yep, watched Jack's live yesterday. Was good. There you go. Yeah, Jack called earlier asking about Jason Fritz, who's up there. I don't know if he's giving a talk. He's handing out his books up there. I wish Jason would try to sell a book. But, hey, it's up to him. So, lots of rain, though. So, see if it kicks something up tonight. Usually that's how it works, is that we get a bunch of rain, and then it heats up. It didn't heat up that bad today, but it heats up, and that usually kicks into the next set of storms. So we'll see what's on the radar later tonight. But happy Friday. And the mic's working, and everything seems to be up and working fine so far. Had 7 inches of rain in the past 10 days. I'll be sure to buy a copy at the Rendezvous. Yeah, somebody needs to buy a copy off the poor guy. Speaking of which, get on Amazon, buy a copy of Jason Fritz's Cracking the Code of the Lost Dutchman Mind. He's handing them away everywhere. Speaking of that, he has not showed up. He doesn't come on anymore. But Glenn Rogers used to, and he had his 10 Reasons Why It's Not in the Superstition Mountains, which doesn't really hold much water. Unfortunately, Glenn did do a lot of research, but he believes it's up in Scottsdale. And then I picked this up because I didn't know this book was out. Hey, Ed. Dreams of Lost Gold, Tammy Merworth. Curtis Merworth was one of the guys from Utah that died up in the mountains back around 2010. She wrote a book about that. Save your money. This is why I don't do reviews, because sometimes they wasted a sapling or a limb of a tree. It's not very long, but it's very poorly written. So terrible that Julius Thomas, the Mexican girl that was friends with Jacob Waltz. Well, she went searching for the mine with Robert Hart Valise and his brother Harmon Valise, and it goes on from there. It was just not researched. It was just poorly done. I get it, she misses her brother, but I mean, it's why I can't do these little 5-10 minute reviews on people's books, because people take it like that one there. I couldn't find anything about it other than she misses her brother. So now we know they found something at Skinwalker Ranch. Okay, well, they found a nickel, yeah. Now you see you screwed it up for Larry, because Larry probably hasn't even watched it yet. Yeah, that was Larry's fault that I bought that. Then, here's Buried Treasures of the American Southwest. Trevor picked this up for me. It's by a guy named Westfield Weld or something. If you see this book, beware. The title is Buried Treasures of the Southwest. Most of the stories, I do not make these things up, are in either Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Texas. I get Texas a little for the Southwest. Oklahoma and Arkansas is kind of puzzling. The most stories in here, there's like 14 stories from Arkansas. You know, Arkansas, the favorite place of the Southwest. There's only four lost treasure stories in Arizona and 4 in New Mexico. The true Southwest. So I was very curious and started to read it. The Lost Dutchman is not in here. The only recognizable one is Victoria Peak in New Mexico, but I was very curious of why. I don't have no idea why it's Buried Treasures of the American Southwest. But he was born in Oklahoma and moved to Arkansas, which is why most of the stories are from those. But the title is, you know, W.C. Jameson is what the name says up here. Huh. Oh, maps by Wendell Hall. Okay, it's 2 different guys. But anyways, yeah, if you see that one, look at the table of contents and that'll warn you off. And yeah, as far as this book, not even amusing. You can't even argue with it. Sorry, Tammy, but that was rough. Trevor was quite amused because I just sat here and read it aloud. And he was in tears. And then, of course, Glenn's book. And like I said, he'll tell you where it's at. And it just, I don't know. I wish he was around still, because I'd like to know where he came up with some of this stuff and why, you know. But again, you know, I would always say, do your research. Don't read like one book or go to Wikipedia and try to write a book. That's always a mistake, and way too many people do that. I can't get over Robert Hart Valise and Harmon Valise. You know, the Valise brothers. It's easy to mix that up with Petrash. Magnet Fishing in Treasure Coast. There you go. By the way, audio sounds a lot better this week. Yes, we got the mic working. I'm not touching it. It's a little further away than I like, but I'm not touching it because I watched Terry Carter's channel, and Shane Gorell talked about the lottery. Yeah, Shane. Seen these things or heard of them. You cannot see them because they're not real, and I've heard of them because I've talked to Shane, and the giant skulls and the javelina skins full of gold and the Ark of the Covenant, and Shane is absolutely delusional. I think he's a very nice guy. I do not believe a single word he speaks is truth in any shape or form. I like him. I will sit and always have a conversation with him, but he has just some of the most ridiculous stuff has come out of him, and he continues to do so. It switches up. As soon as he thinks someone makes a claim, and Rick Gwynn said, "Oh, I think I saw a Bigfoot over here." Well, then, you know, Shane went out and he happened to see a family of them, a family of 4 or 5 he was claiming, and it's always gets ridiculous. And so I hope he's well, but he needs to stop with the comedy. Yeah, that Jameson's book was just wild. But I did read a couple. I got a couple other books that were really good, and I went through, so that was nice. I picked up a couple nice copies of Killer Mountains, including the British copy in mint condition, and, you know, always collecting some other volumes, first editions. But yeah, those were disappointing. Jason's I was really familiar with because I helped proofread it and helped him with the editing before he released the book. So I was, you know, and I'm not gonna disparage on someone of the place they think the Lost Dutchman is and all that. That's you know everybody's entitled to their opinion and whatnot is according to that. And he did a nice job, and he put something together, represented his views. He corrected some of the mistakes he made. There's some stuff still, but it's his personal viewpoint. It wasn't terrible. And I will say Glenn's book isn't terrible. It's just is more of his perspective point of view. It wasn't researched very well, but it was still. It didn't make me feel like he was delusional. I think he went a little further than Wikipedia, maybe. Hey, Jax. But well, that's Rocky. Jax is coming in behind him. And then, so I get a dog on each side. But, yes, I really feel bad about the Tammy Merworth one. Did not know it was around. Man, that was rough. So, and it's, when you're laughing at something that you shouldn't be laughing at, that's the problem, because you can't stop laughing at it because it's in the ridiculous place. So there we go. I watched. Okay, that we did the Terry Carter, yeah. And okay, in your opinion, more gold found in Arizona or Utah? Arizona, there's been a lot of gold. I don't know. I've never tried to equate the two. I know there's been a lot of gold found up in Utah in the mountains as well, and a lot of camps. When you get around that Prescott area and then definitely down on the north end of the Superstitions, and how much gold was pulled out of the Bulldog and the Mammoth, the Wasp, the Black Queen. I mean, there's a lot of gold. And then all the other mines that have had gold in them. I don't know which one would be more, and you could almost try to ask if Nevada should be in there, or Colorado. I mean, that's the Southwest. So, happy Friday, tilting a glass to Bob Ward, Clay, and all the Dutch hunters, past and pens. Hey, Dallas, hola. Whitest Hispanic I've ever met, Dallas Wright. Vicksburg. We just threw Vicksburg. But anyways, so that's kind of those. But that was, I had that idea. Let's do 5-minute videos of book reviews. So I'll tell you where to find the book and so forth, and kind of give you my take on the book. And then I realized, I told Trevor, I said, there's some of these books I can't say nothing nice about. Then there was someone wanting me to do a review of something of where he's basically, I don't want to say his name. Well, I will say his name. James Simpson. I will give him this. James Simpson contacted me. We talked many times on the telephone. He has his spot, and he showed me maps, and he told me all the information and sent me photographs and everything. Never a piece of ore, never showed me anything that I could say, oh, that's really interesting. Kept making claims of finding this mine and all this stuff. Never saw any photograph of that. Of a bunch of other stuff, he never showed me any proof of a photograph. Kept wanting us to film it. He wanted me to do it on Chasing Legends. He got an article, somebody did an article on his claims in Popular Mechanics. He didn't write the article. Someone else wrote an article, and it went in Popular Mechanics. It was on the Beale cipher or something, and his claim of this whole thing. And he thinks, we invited him to be a guest speaker at the Rendezvous. He, just an hour or two before he was supposed to show up and speak, he just said, oh, I can't make it, I need a ride. And that kind of all just, and I haven't heard from him since last year at the Rendezvous pretty much, and now he's trying to get back in the good graces, I take it. But yeah, James, you can show up at the Rendezvous, and if there's some time, we can kind of give you a moment. But someone did a online magazine article on, your topic, and you've posted stuff on Facebook, but, you're kind of your own worst enemy in that. I'm sure he's not happy with that, but that's... How was Helen, Julia and Riney, supposed to find their way from the ridge north of the board house all the way to Silver Chief by themselves? Well, that's one of my big problems, is if you take some of the descriptions and some of the stuff, it doesn't make sense as far as the Silver Chief. I won't always argue the Silver Chief. I just have my opinion on that, and I've been there. So that's also one of those other things I always can put a pin in and say, I went there, I've been there, I kind of looked over everything, I looked at the history, I double-checked, I looked at the history on stuff, and there's a lot of problems. But Jesse had a fine book, and I think his book holds a lot of water and a lot of other things, and I think he did a fine job with the Dutchman's Trail, the second version of his book, and I think it's a good book. You can buy it, and I don't think you're, other than you can have a difference of opinion on the Lost Dutchman theory, the rest of it's a very, very fine book. From Miss Kavanagh's veranda, the board house. At Al Morrow's Jester mine was dug out of rock. Why did he think it was the LDM? I don't know if he really did. He had a number of different mines, and the Jester was the one he was working on. and who knows where his brain was at that point. Um, there was a lot of different things he had going on. So he had several different diggings up there, and I remember someone told me there was one that was higher up. And they, you got to remember, a lot of these guys would dig these tunnels thinking they were going to intercept something. So that was what, and it was the opposite point of when they thought they found the old Spanish-Mexican tunnels up at the, by Williams Camp. And they dug a pit trying to intercept those. And the opposite being, but I think that was kind of his thing of doing that. Is Jason going to have hardback copies? He probably should. I have a softback here I have hardbacks, but yeah, I'm sure he's going to bring some of each until he runs out. If he quits handing them out, just invite him over for coffee. You'll get a copy. I'm working on my own guitar that'll have a reversed fenders. Yours looks cool as... Yeah, it does look cool. I always like that look. It's just different. It's just, you know what the big problem is? Once you get used to your tuning pegs, either 3-a-side or a traditional fender, it's so weird to be doing them on the other side. Because then you got to remember to do it the other direction, and yeah, it's confusing. Good for you, though, working on your own guitar. Jesse's book was a good read, and it doesn't take you all day to read it. Always a good show here. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Are there any more t-shirts available? I don't know. You'd have to... Trevor just, I think, walked out to the pool. Trevor, is there t-shirts still available? Are you working on that, or... Okay, Trevor says they should be available on the website. If it's not, just let us know. Make a comment or shoot us an email at the website and let him know, and he can kind of fix it. So, but yeah, as far as he knows, they're still available. The Rendezvous and Legend shirts in gray and black, long sleeve and short sleeve, correct? Do we have hats still? Okay, he's looking on his phone. And coffee cups.
Looks like everything's still on.
Okay, he's saying everything's still on there. So there should be stuff. What was the Silver Chief claim? But was the Silver Chief claim before the LDM? Well, Waltz never said when he was at the LDM. But he did say the last time he was there 10 years before he died. So the Silver Chief was being worked while after Waltz had already been, that didn't make any sense. Coffee mugs are good. I got a couple of them around. Where are they? They're up there on the shelf. But yeah, that was my biggest problem when I read the book and I started looking at it. I was thinking, hold it, there's two things, because he had to have not been at the mine. And then, the funnier part, a door's opening. Sometimes the dogs have a weird thing with the door's opening. Door opened. Must bark. But anyways, one of the big problems I had with it is none of the stories can coincide, and I think there was a lot of clues and a lot of information used from the Dick Holmes stuff, which I just think is all bull. But the problem with the Dick Holmes stuff in that aspect is Dick Holmes has Waltz there in the 1880s when the Silver Chief Waltz should have noticed all the people and everything happening. So none of it makes sense to me. How many more pages left to write on Trevor's doctorate? It's not how it works, but Trevor's working on his doctorate. Usually it takes 4 to 6 years. He's thinking he'll be done in 3. He's going to try to push it to 2.5. Remember, he's working full time. And on his full-time job, he also has another part-time thing, and then he has this. So he's got a lot going on. But yeah, I think he told me the other day he's trying to keep it under 3 to be done with that. And then he's thinking about working on another master's, I think. How did Bob Ward find the horse heart and 7 for the book? Well, Was it already? Well, that's one of those problems with Bob Ward. Is Bob Ward? I've always talked. There was 3 stories about Bob Ward. I would talk to people that knew him. Some people said Bob, and I know this. He went all over the mountains and he found stuff. He just freaking was notorious for just being out in the mountains, wandering and walking everywhere. 2, Bob Ward also used to create things in the mountains, so it's easy to find them when you make them yourself. And 3, Bob used to just utterly just make up things and that you can't find. So you have these 3 different stories. I remember I was in the rendezvous. It was like the second or third rendezvous. There was 3 or 4 people that knew him, and they all had their different version of a Bob Ward. And so that's one of the problems with Ward all the time, is you're not quite sure if he found it or if he made it. I think he found a lot of things, but then I also know he did a lot of things, and because he felt if he did something to embellish or help make the story sound better, that works better. Hey Wayne, looking to get a copy of Superstition Cowboys. Superstition Mountain Museum, when it opens back up on the 18th. I know they still had a couple copies there, and they should be open on the 18th. They were remodeling this summer. There might be a copy or 2 at Goldfield Ghost Town, at the museum in Goldfield Ghost Town. So, other than that, I don't know. I don't know if there's any more ever been printed. Did Frank ever find Herman's money at his cabin site? No. They were looking for what someone else was looking for, and then they claimed that someone else must have got it because they tunneled under that, and I don't know. Yeah, Herman supposedly had this box and all this other stuff. Watched your Weeks Wash vid, also an old vid of Weeks Wash flooding. Now, while you're searching them, yeah, there's a lot. You can get drifted down in those places, and you can find a lot of odd stuff. It's always good to work those sites over and over, especially after rainstorms and a number of things. Different things happen. We need to bring some of the mule bones down from Fresno Creek for them barking dogs. No, the dogs don't do bones here. They don't do any of the pig ears or any of that stuff because they'll fight. It's 3 boys and they will fight to the death, because if you bring 3 bones in the house, each dog feels they're all 3 theirs. In fact, Rocky is celebrating a birthday. Don't know what it is. It's probably his 6th or 7th birthday. Anyways, he got 2 toys, so he laid on one toy while keeping the other toy under his paws, because he didn't want Jax or Dexter to have a toy. And that is exactly how they are. Rocky particularly. Rocky believes everything is his. And he does not like when the other dogs get any tension. So, which is kind of sucks for him, because Jax is like the favorite son. If old Jake walked up to his mine with anyone ready, assuring him, he would have just started blasting pew pew pew. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Is it known for sure whether or not Julian Reinhardt's had a guide during their first trips? Yes, they had a guide. God, I can't remember his name. It was written in, God, we used to talk about it because we knew who the first person was, because in Jim Bark's notes it talks about there was 3 of them. This is before Herman made it. And God, I can't remember the guy's name. Was it Robert something? I don't want to say that. I have to look that up. But yes, there was a couple different people they kind of went around with, and nothing was happening, and they weren't getting anywhere. And there's probably frustration on the part of the people that they were trying to help them, and then that turned into Reinhardt basically contacting Herman and then Gottfried to come out. And they were separate, so Herman, I think, made it first, and then Gottfried showed up afterwards. But yeah, there was another individual, and he's written about, I think he's in some newspaper articles, because after they did their initial searches with him, then he continued to search for it. And he was like some prospector known around town. Busca el Corazon. Okay, search for the heart. All right. Clay Wurst and Dr. Thorne mine with Native Americans showing the sources. Really, Malapais and Geronimo had mountains. Okay. Rocky sounds like Putin. No, he doesn't. He just barks a lot, though. He's a talker. It's weird how different dogs, they grow up together and they have such individual personalities. Um, Dexter's quite vocal, but he's kind of a. Jax is the weird one because if I come home, he whines. He does a lot of whining around me because he's so happy to see me. He's really. Which Jake used to do that too. He used to roll on the ground and whine that I was home. But if you hear Jax out back, you would think there's this huge Rottweiler barking. Jax has a very deep bark. It's kind of weird, and but yeah, they're all different. Rocky's just the talkative one of the bunch. I'm interested in maps. What are the few good maps off the top of your head? Fish map, Gonzales map. I think those are two good maps to work off of because they kind of more of a layout of the ground. That's the only two because I really, well, there's the one that Shoes had, and I don't know what you call that, Los Terros Pacharia or something, but Shoes had that one. It's in the Thunder Gods Gold newer edition. I don't remember what the name of it is, but that one was actually, they had that tested, and it was a very, very old map, and Shoes found some mines off of it up on Hackberry, and was able to pinpoint a number of the mines that were on the map on Hackberry and put that together. We're going to someday go out there and film some of that, some of those finds, the map and the story behind it, and then go out and film a few of those places so everybody can see them. I'm interested in maps. Okay, yeah, well, I did that one. I'm just repeating myself. Bark note mention cut mesquite trees. Any idea where they were? There no, most everything's gone. People cut things up for firewood. They died. You know, the tree that Adolph Roost's skull was found under is gone. The RP cactus is gone. John Burbridge found a lot of mesquite blazes and stuff that I think he thought was deering, which Bark said he found deerings. And Burbridge found a bunch of them, and there's pictures of them in his pamphlet that he wrote of the spires of rocks that were built, and those all got knocked down, whether it was by Barkley or other people over there. That's a weird thing with a lot of Dutch hunters is, you know, you got the guys that'll create things, but then you have the guys that destroyed things, and which is always a shame. So, but I think there was some of them down in Needle Canyon and up around Bluff Springs, I'm thinking. But I know some of the monuments were found on Bluff Springs Mountain. And, you know, you got to remember part of the story that was followed in the Apache story and some of the others that's not always traditionally talked about. It was there's 8 or 9 mines. So there would have been monuments in a number of different areas. And then there was the story that the Peraltas and Gonzaleses worked in the area together, but they also had separate areas they were mining, which never was really confirmed. Hackberry Rogers Ridge. You think there's treasures of caches in the sea, not counting mine? Yes, I know there's 5 possibilities right now. I'm not going to tell you where they're at. I'll let you guys know if we do recover, but yeah, there's caches and stuff. People have always found stuff, and there are some people today finding out that there was stuff in the mountains. It's, you know, the problem is with the fraud and hoaxes, it's hard to always try to understand which is the real stuff and which isn't. People tried to pass everything off as real at one time, which was a mistake, and it makes everything dirty. Where can I get a copy of John Burbridge's pamphlet? I'm trying to get the museum, and it's a tough road, but Greg Davis and I are trying to get the museum to reprint everything. I think that's Lost Mines and Monuments. Monuments and Mines? I'm going to look for it right now. It's up here somewhere. Should be right in this pile of things. Give me a moment. Okay. Had to grab a pile of things because I think it's piled. It's just a thinner pamphlet. Here is the Lost Dutchman. Here's that thing. This is always touted as one of the first written accounts. It's not a book, but it's Identification of the Lost Dutchman mine. This is the stuff with Draculich. Then The Vulture, Coronado's 7 Cities, The Apache Trail, Apache Wars of the Superstition Mountains by Huckabee, Why Me by Richard Robinson, good guy. Who's this? Oh, John Wilburn's Dutchman's Lost Ledge of Gold. This would be one we'd try to get reprinted and put back up. Forgotten Mines and Treasures of the Old Southwest. Wayne Winters. Yeah, there is that. Here's the ceremony thing for the Lost Dutchman Monument. Going through. Is it not in this pile? Arizona's Rich Hill. Arizona First Families, Centennial Book, Arizona Gem Trails, and a map of the super. Oh, this is Bob Ward's map. One of Bob Ward's maps from Echoes. All right, I'll be back because I'm gonna find that book now. I know it's here somewhere. Where is it? I own too much stuff. I have way too much stuff. Okay. Here's that. This. Alright. I own way too many books. Okay, In Search of the Heart, Deciphering the Peralta Stones by Rick Gwynn and Phil Reinhardt. Got signed copies of that. Lost Gold of the Superstitions. John Wilburn again. This is an interesting little book. The Peralta Stone Maps, The Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. Ron Feldman wrote the foreword, and it's by Jim Hatt. And these are numbered editions. I don't think they're available anymore. There's color, too. It's signed by Ron and Jim. This is number 39. This is number 37. So I have 2 of those. Superstition Hieroglyphic Canyon by Mitch Waite. Legend of the Superstition Mountains, the Lost Dutchman Museum, which Legend of the Superstition Mountains was Tom Collenborn at first. Yeah, it's by Tom Collenborn. They used to reprint this for the museum, but it actually says Superstition Mountain Museum, but it's actually Tom Collenborn. Treasure Symbols and Signs of the Soup by Penfield. Oh, I didn't know I owned that. Doc Rosecrans' book. There's that. His pamphlet, which the museum would reprint. That's one of the other ones. Here's Barney Barnard's, or Hyham's. Man, where is that Burbridge book? Oh, why can't I find that? I thought it was Lost Mines and Monuments. That's weird that I went through all that stuff and I did not find that. It's probably because I took it out and put it somewhere else while I was reading it. But it's a good pamphlet little booklet. I'm going to look for that one. But yeah, Burbridge's pamphlet, it's harder to find. It's not very big. It's going to be something like, well, smaller than Rosecrans' book. But it has some black and white photographs and stuff in it. The earlier generations, if you can find an old copy, the photographs are much better than the reprints. Greg did a crappy job, or whoever did it at the museum, of printing those. How much time do you spend off trail in Fish Creek Canyon? Well, there's no trail in Fish Creek Canyon, is there? I don't know. You just walk through the canyon. So I've never. I mean, there's a point where there's a trailhead by that one parking lot. Other than that, I've just walked around in the canyon. I walk up on the ridges, and I usually try, if I walk down one side or up on the ridge on one side, come back the other side. So I always try to take a different route each time I'm in there. So I'm never really, I didn't know there's actually a trail. I wouldn't say there is a trail. Just walk down the canyon. Have you been to Nowhere Canyon on the ranch or the ranch? Trough the horses wouldn't go nowhere in the middle of nowhere. Yes, and well, okay, but yeah, there's like Nowhere Canyon, No Name Canyon. There's a bunch of weird canyons. A hoarder of information. I don't think it's hoarding. I just pick things up. I was kind of surprised the Burbage was in two different places. I bet the mine is a stone's throw from Elisha's grave site. I doubt that. The information you have is worth more than the LDM itself. I don't know. I don't know if the books are worth that much. Now it's bugging me where the Burbage book is. If Trevor didn't come home and just decide to go swimming, I'd have him peeling through all that, because it's going to drive me nuts this whole weekend to find out that where I put that, because it should have been with these. Anytime there's these kind of stapled together, I call them almost pamphlet type material, but I always keep all that stuff together. And I've moved it around a bunch of times to find more room for different books. And like I've said before, I always keep different editions. And I am I've been a butthead about Tom Collimore stuff, because I always buy them but I give them away to people. But I always try to have 3 copies because I have 3 kids, and I figure when something happens later, if they're interested, there won't be a fight over stuff. Each of them will be able to get a copy. So there's 3 copies of Killer Mountains. There's 3 copies of what is that there? I'm just looking over there. Coronado's Children. 3 copies of When Silver Was King. Trevor has some of his own editions he's bought from Jack and Jesse and stuff, and he's bought a few of his own and had them sign them. But for the most part, I always wanted to make sure there never was a fight. If any of them had interest or their children had interest, they would have their own copies to pass along. That was weird. My phone was making a noise. Backside of Tortilla Mountain. Ever find anything, maybe a canyon? Yeah, there's always canyons everywhere. Tortilla's pretty rugged country. Going around that. Well, and that's a weird thing, because Peters Mesa is kind of part of that for the most part. So you got to go through one to go to the other if you're going from Tortilla. But I don't know. Peters Canyon, Tortilla, and Peters Mesa, I never found as interesting. There was so many people trashed so much stuff up there, and there was so much activity in the late 70s, early 80s, and the people up there, and then it became a big thing again in the 2000s. I was just like, kind of, okay, I'll go up. And then some people were fraudulent about some things up there, and that kind of usually turns me off, is when that happens. They're pointing out, this is where this happened, and then I'm finding, it didn't really happen there. They were just doing that because they wanted to be the expert, or say, I knew so-and-so when they didn't really, and that kind of probably polluted my feeling. But I'd been up there, and I went through there, and I went up Squaw and Old Squaw and New Squaw and the Zigzag. Just to, I always say this: don't knock it till you've been there or you've checked it out. So you can say, the Silver Chief isn't it. I can feel like, okay, I went out there a couple times and I looked at everything, and I can say that I just don't feel that. So, but then I was there. So that usually makes a difference. And that was how I started, got the book, and then I was like, I gotta go to these places. And that was my whole life, was going to places. And when people say, I found this here, I will actually physically go there and look at it with my fresh eyes. I don't like going out there with other people necessarily a lot of times. Randy and I would check stuff out, but I think Randy understood. I didn't want someone in my head telling me and trying to convince me. I didn't need a salesman. I just wanted to look at it and say, what do I think? And because I think I do my own fair amount of research and so forth, and I have questions I can ask them afterwards. So that's a lot of those places where I've been. Ron Feldman said, a treasure pulled from Bias in Hewitt. There's been a lot of things pulled out of the mountains. I mean, not always claimed and so forth. The problem is, even with some of the photographic evidence of trying to decide whether or not it really was pulled, and people overlayered stories. I think there's a few occasions of some stories I'm curious at because of some things. I don't know, someone's texting, but I don't see anything wrong. I see the volume, everything. So then I have to wonder, it's Mr. Galloway. Oh, okay, well, old JW texting. He's not watching, obviously. But he was traveling to Tucson, so that's probably why. Man, that Burbridge thing is messing me up. How much time we got? We got plenty of time. I'm going to take another look because it is bothering me that I can't find it. Because it's one of the books I talk about a lot. Okay, we'll turn on a light. I don't think it's here. I can't tear stuff up. Casa Grande, Where the Past Lives, Constellation Road. Bob Ward. Lost Echoes. Strange Things You Find. A picture of Woody. Foods of the Superstitions. That's obvious. Boxaw's book, Chasing Pedro. Another one of Barney Barnhart's book. I got two of those in two different places. Man. Okay, it's starting to kill me now. Why can't I find it? Huh. Is this it? Oh! Okay, I think I located it finally. And it comes in different colors. Wasn't always a favor of this one. Arizona's Monument to Lost Mines by John Burbridge. Yep. Okay, there it is. There's what it looks like. Like I said, the later generations, I'm trying to always make sure, but it's hard to see the pictures. They're kind of blurry. They weren't copied well. Greg Davis does has John Burbridge's his archives, a lot of his archival work. I'm trying to find one of those pictures of one of the. It's got a lot of the carved cactus pictures from different eras and times. It's very interesting. Burbridge's other work, and he does on the pictures. A lot of the pictures he wrote on them, where they were and what you're looking at. So it makes it very interesting. And he did work with Barry Storm. So there's all the Storm stuff. Picture of the RP cactus. Greg Davis said Burbridge, he always respected him a great deal. Here's the Linsba LDM when they were excavating around there. I don't know where everything is in it. It's kind of dim in here, but it's a really nice little book. I wish he would have taken time and made this 3-4 times larger of more material, because Burbridge, Greg Davis always said he respected him a great deal because he didn't stay on the trails. He was off trail, where even Barry Storm, a lot of those guys would camp near the trails. Burbridge was a bushwhacker, and because of that, it was, there you go. Hackberry Spring is where I imagine Woody Wampler gold pens. No, Woody Wampler goes down to Hewitt. Is there a map available with all the names of the places, mines? The topo maps. I would say topo maps. There's a topo map place, Wide World of Maps on, is it Indian School? It used to be on Indian School on the west side of the 17. It's now downtown. I'm going to look it up for you. But it's Wide World of Maps. I was there not too long ago. I think it's still on Indian School Road. Wide World of Maps. There's a lot of wide worlds of different things. Of maps. Oh. There it is, and that's the logo. Where is it at? Give me a location. You're showing me pictures. They have all the government topos. Huh. Why don't they have an address on there? Here. Directions. Why is it not locations? Here's the locations. Retail store locations. Yes, 2133 East Indian School. Okay. They have, it's the same one. It's the only one. It's closed on weekends. It's open on weekdays, but they have all the government topos and different ones. Get the government topos. I don't have one sitting here. I have 2 or 3 of each one. I have the ones I mark, and then I have the ones that I look at and follow through. They have a lot of the older mines and prospects and stuff marked on them, and then I mark and continue do that. Okay. That's the best map. One of the other best maps, and I don't have one sitting around here, there was one put out years and years ago. It was a really good map, and it was a nice little fold-out map. And they quit making those. And every time I've asked anybody if I haven't seen one in forever. I got mine back in the 80s. It might have been in the late 70s, and I haven't seen one probably since then. And everybody else says, yeah, that's a great little map, but nobody has it because it's so easy. It's black and white. It's just a plain black and white, and everything's easy to read off of. And it gives you a lot of space on it to be able to pencil in things and stuff. Someone pulled something out of Old Hewitt by Butte. Picked the places, Spanish and Herman. There's a lot of stuff in there because there was a lot of silver up through there. A lot of Native American ruins. That was Bob Garman's hunting ground, and the Mullins brothers, Hart and Jesse Mullen, and a bunch of other people. A lot of people back in that area in Bias. And they all had their particular thing, and that guy, Frank has that bee under his bonnet because of them. It was kind of like he didn't learn the Dutchman from the beginning up and grow. So once he heard that stuff, then that stuff took precedence, and he said, well, it has to be here, and it has to be this because of these guys and this. But he ignored all the other stuff. But, there's a lot up there. There's a lot of prospects, a lot of old mines. A lot of silver was pulled out of that area. A squaw full of brush. I've been thinking checking out the caves. I don't know. The fire went through there. I know Scott and John. There's been a few people been out that way. Superstition Mountain Treasure. I don't know if you do the Facebook thing or anything, but those guys on there, one of the two of them have been through there since the fire. And if the fire got up into LaBarge, up into one of those canyons, then it would have burned it out. I know Pistol Canyon's terrible. There's a couple of them that are chock full of cat claw and stuff, and it's horrible. But I know they also burned out at different times, because the one, how do I even go around telling that story? There was someone that once was telling a story of something, and it was so cat-clawed and brush-filled that nobody could even, turn around. And he was claiming there was certain camps and things in there. And then it burned out, and then everybody found out he was full of crap. But that was around Pistol. But if the fire got through there, it should be cleaned out. It's not terrible. I never thought it was really that bad. It wasn't, But Pistol Canyon was one of the worst. That was one of those really bad ones where you might be butt naked by the time you get out. So, and it depends which squaw, but they're, next to each other. But I never thought squaw had that much brush, but it was still after the era of so many people had been in and out of there. Things can get kind of wild. I don't think the mountains were a lot thinner because of the cattle were back in there too still. There was a lot of loose cattle and stuff back in the mountains. But once the cattle were removed, the mining and all these guys quit going out there and they weren't doing it, that changed a lot of it. But I wouldn't think it was that bad. But that would be the site I would check on those guys. Just put an inquiry up and ask, hey, is squaw burned out or is it clean? I don't remember it ever being that brushy, but it's been a while, so it could be, How is that word Hewitt spelt? I wish to pan where Woody pans. Don't. Well, if it's a claim and you pan where he claims and we come over the hill, then you hear me saying, Woody, Frank, no, don't shoot him. He pans in Hewitt. Pick up a spot in Hewitt, and if there's no claim post, pan in that area. Hewitt's a big canyon. If you are not comfortable with this topic, cool. had to ask what happened with the Canadian Club whiskey and Larry. We'll get back to that in a second. My dad was raised up in Apache Junction. He always told us about the LDM. He left in '67 for Arkansas. I will see those mountains. Shaking your hand is something on my bucket list. Well, I'll make sure I wash my hands then. I'm not that big of a deal. Larry Hedrick and the it's not Canadian Club, it's Hiram Walker. Larry has told his story a lot, and I kind of have always avoided that story and certain things about Larry, because there's I call Larry, I wished him happy birthday, I talked to Larry, and sometimes I'll say, I can't really talk about this because I'd heard about it. Greg Davis showed me a bottle of the Hiram Walker. Tom Collenborn showed me a bottle of it. I can't remember who else. Someone else had a bottle. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. I'd like a bottle of that, because everybody seems to, how do you find that? Does anybody have any more? And someone told me Larry did. And I hadn't met Larry then at that point or anything. And they said, no, Larry's the guy. Larry was the one that has it and all that. So we're at the rendezvous, and this is early on. This is probably 2005, 6, 7. And we're sitting there one night around the campfire. And Tom Collenborn was there. I think Sharon was there. But we were all sitting around a fire at Joe Robato's camp. And someone asked Tom about the Hiram Walker. And it was kind of, the discussion at first was like, Greg was going, yeah, I got a bottle. Larry gave me a bottle. He gave you one or two, Tom? And Tom, I think, had one or two, or he gave one to Bob Corbin, something like that. Larry only recently started coming to the rendezvous. So they're all talking, and then, I know if Paul Shimmick was here, he might remember this. Don't do it, says Dallas Wright. And Tom said, well, Larry couldn't find himself out of his own garage. He had to have a little help. So the story was, Tom was like, I had to tell Larry where it was because I went out with them and I knew where it was, but I couldn't be the one that finds it. So Tom said he told Larry, which Larry vehemently denies. Larry says that's a lie. That is untrue. As Tom is saying this, Greg is nodding. And I can't remember who else. Someone else said, well, is that why he gave you the bottles to keep your mouth shut? And Tom started laughing. And it was like, oh, okay. So that is kind of the story there. So Larry's going to have his plaque, and he's got his thing out there and all. But yeah, that's why I remembered it. It was because it was so funny, is when Tom was like, Larry couldn't find his way out of his own garage. And he said, I had, so Tom was like that. There's a number of other stories, other situations I know are absolutely true with Tom and Bob Corbin, where they did things like, hey, I'll tell you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Dallas, you're going to take it back now. But it's so common, and there's so many campfires it's been told at. And I've even kind of told Larry, come on, Larry. It's like, is that what you're staking your claim to fame on? But yes, Tom claimed that. Greg supported that. And if you confront Greg with it, he'll say, well, that's what they say. It's funny. But I've heard it from 4 or 5 different people, and it was at the campfire, so there's no way. But that happened with a lot of people in a lot of situations where things were found in the mountains, and then you find out the person that found it wasn't the person that found it, or different things involved in it. So, yeah, that was what happened. And so there we did it, and Larry will see this, and then he won't like me anymore, and he won't be my friend. And he'll be mad and upset. But then, you know what the other cool part is? And if Larry watches this and listens to all this, this is where it gets buggy. If he really hates on me, I can tell you all about all the other stuff. And that's what'll probably keep Larry saying, I wish you hadn't said anything about that. Because that would lead into another half dozen stories about things that Larry would not want publicly mentioned. So I'm pretty good with Larry, and I think he's got enough of a sense of humor, and I don't think it really matters anymore. But if you want to hang your hat on it, and it's kind of a weird thing to hang your hat on. I remember an ad in the Playboy magazine that showed Canadian. I was pretty sure it was Hiram Walker, though. That's what I thought was reported in the newspapers. It was Hiram Walker company that did it. The tail is better than the whiskey. It definitely was. See, we drove Dallas away. Dallas is cringing in the corner, going, "Oh my God." I don't know, Dallas. Have you ever met Larry? Yeah, there's I've I've always tried to stay away from certain stories. There's a lot of stories I will always stay away, and even in a campfire with a certain very few people, I will still avoid telling the story because it's just sometimes so embarrassing for that person that you're like, oh man. I don't know if there is ever enough room or years for it to be funny. Literally, everybody would have to be dead, and I'm like 140, and I'd have to tell the story. Just, at that point, just to be like, yeah, this is what happened. Have you had any of Hiram Walker tonight before the live stream? No, I don't drink that much at all. Not rarely. Mine is a nightcap in the evening. Sun's still up. So, but yeah, that's that story. That could be the book I write a 120 page book on stuff you thought you knew, and then just tell the other version of the story. But that's what Tom Collenborn said, and he told that story a number of different times. And then Greg Davis nodding, and then and I'm trying to remember who there was another person involved, not involved, but I think someone else, maybe Clay, but I know it was different sources. That's what made me in the end go, oh crap, man. I tried asking Larry a couple questions at the rendezvous, but he had to go fast. Yes, Larry can be like that. I will always apologize for Larry's not being present for people. He should be. I don't know. You will find I always try to get back to you. I always try, I try, but I'm here and do this. You're not going to find those other guys doing this. They will not do this. That'd be a can of worms. The whiskey story is almost as much of a legend as... See, that's my thing. To me, even when they're later and all that, rather than going out, oh, we're going to make a new plaque for you and stuff, the better story is Tom and him setting up and doing that. Hiram Walker's not coming to your house and taking the bottles. Nobody cares anymore. People now would think it's funny that Tom and you scammed them. It's pizza. Heck with the booze. It's pizza night. I will be picking up pizzas here shortly. Yes, we're kind of winding down, and I will be doing the pizza run here after this is over. Grocery run and then a pizza run because I wanted pizza tonight. But yeah, that's, and like I said, I thought it was Canadian Club. That's what I've always said. And then I was doing This Day in the Superstition Mountains, and it said the Hiram Walker Company in the newspaper article. So I don't know. That's what I read. I could call Larry about it, but his head's spinning now. Sorry, Larry. Just, don't be too mad, because then then it gets kind of weird because I start telling other stories. But yeah, that would be the best stories, is all the untold stories that we should tell. Dallas keeps retracting things. Dallas is sitting there cringing, going, oh man, we're going to get too much truth. No. And I don't think it harms anything. That's my point, is like, what, it's it's really doesn't matter at a certain point with some of those things. I mean, it's not like a big deal, you know. And if Tom hadn't sent Larry to get it, Tom would have probably went and picked it up himself, or there would have been a bottle missing or some shit. Thanks, Wayne, as always. No problem. They flew him to New York. Who did they fly to New York? They flew him to New York. Oh no, or Larry. Yeah, that was. Yeah, last time we talked about it, he was bitching about how he didn't really have much left because he had to give so much away, and I kind of was laughing, and I said, "Why is that, Larry?" Goodness of your heart. I think Larry posted something about it on the Mystery Superstition. Yes, he's done like 2 or 3 episodes on that. Yes, if you want to know where the Lost Dutchman Mine isn't, where the Jesse and Hart Mullins, they've done at least 8-9 videos on that spot. They have a reputation for repetition. We've run out of stories, and then I get on the phone with them and say, why don't you tell this story? We talk about stuff, and I say, why don't you tell that story? Why don't you tell this story? Why don't you tell them about that trip? And then for some reason he never does that, so I'm not gonna. Yeah, we'll just let poor Larry be. Great to see everybody. It was his birthday too. Cheers to Bob Ward. Yes, yep, Bob Ward. Who knows where he ended up? But now County put up a shrine. Well, there was something marking it, and then it just got old, or whether the people destroyed it. I don't know. And then they had someone else made a new one for him and all that. It makes him feel good. He's 86, 87, so there you go. Do you know much about the Mammoth Mine and Clay's Wasp Mine? Access the Mormon flooded ore chutes. Most all that stuff and everything around there is on private property. I'd be very careful. The owners won't want you picking and messing around on that stuff. I know a bit about the Mammoth. That's the Shoes and the Feldman's territory, being the owners of it. And then the Wasp, I was pretty good on. I learned a lot this last couple of times because we went out and we did a great video. We walked through the whole Wasp and everything about it. And we did a really nice video that Trevor never posted because we never did another season. Would be season 7 or whatever. We never did that season. We've never had enough footage because we like to do 12 episodes. So whenever we get enough material to do like that 12 episode thing, that will be part of that. Me and Trevor and Bob Shoes out at the Wasp and going through all the Wasp stuff. What did I miss? Got pulled away wearing police, and you can go back and watch it. Larry's like, oh no, what happened, man? No. Post a Wasp video. Yeah, Trevor's, we have to see. I know we had 3 or 4. We're getting close to 4 or 5. And we were trying to get Frank to do some stuff, and then we made a plan. And then I can't remember what happened to the plan. It didn't really. And then we said this fall we'll get that done. I'm trying to remember how many seasons we were in. Somebody could just post it because I'm going to have to look. Of the Legend stuff, because Legend, Chasing Legends, and Live are all different. Playlists. Season 4, 3, 2, 1. Season 5. Maybe there was only the 5 seasons. Because COVID kind of screwed us up too. But there was a bunch of stuff left over, and that was kind of like, that was that, So the Wasp video is there. I know that. And we worked and filmed the whole thing. So, well, how could I be anybody else? Well, Clay was cool, man. I miss Clay. I just miss Clay. The Mammoth Mine goes very, very deep. Yes. Very deep. It's weird, and it's very disorienting to get into these old mines that are very deep, because it's just kind of, and the weird part is, and I don't recommend people going into some of these old shafts, is that there would be a pit right in the middle of the tunnel, and if you're not very aware of what you're doing, you could walk right into and drop 500 feet. Sometimes there's planks that go across them, and there's a few of them like that. I hate that part, is like doing that. Bad, you know. So there you go. But Hillbilly Bob, the Relic Hunter, he's going to be coming. She's going to be coming down the mountain anytime soon. 4th down, they hit a super game. Oh, Clay's words, miss Clay. I just miss Clay. I like, you know, his smile and his laugh. And he was always such a polite and tried to keep things so nice and moral and neat. And you were waiting for him to break, you know. He would sit there and then something would happen and he would look and he'd give you that look in his eye like he found it funny, but he couldn't like really burst out laughing and stuff. He always tried to keep it very nice and neat and considerate and be a moral compass. Well, dogs are going crazy. Someone walked in a door. I think you could come out of the closet, out a closet door or a bathroom in here, and the dogs get excited. They just adore. They also know the sound of the security camera. So anytime the security camera posts that someone's out front, the dogs run to go look. Did you get any good pictures of the cross in the back of the Bat Cave? No, I never was up in there, really. So the only picture I have is from a still photos that they posted to show Jack San Felice. And when we finished filming with Jack San Felice, they left them on the back seat of my truck. And I went through them and they had multiple copies. So I took one of each version of some of these copies and stuck them in the little pouch in the back of my seat. So they didn't know I took them. And I was just kind of like, so I would have something because, yeah, we only saw those. We saw what was on the laptop, which was after we'd finished filming. We saw the laptop days later. And then we saw the photos, the printed actual photos. We didn't see those till we came back out and visited with Jack San Felice. That wasn't filmed during the first 6 weeks. That was filmed. They had to do a pickup on that because they didn't like us ending in my truck. They wanted it to end at the Silver King, the Silver King. So we came back, and then they had those there. When they finished, they walked over and they put them on the back seat of my truck. And then I walked over and said, "What's this?" And I realized, and so I took a few of them and I stuck them in the back of my seat. I think I signed one and gave one away back years ago. There might be a couple more of them laying around. Losing Clay was a huge loss. It was. Cheers to Clay, Bob, Ryan Sandberg. Yes, Rhino. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I got to get me shoes on. Take my shoes and put them on and go get groceries. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Yes, I will be trying to get this and a number of others. I'll have to make a stack of the publications you used to be able to get from the museum and track it, and then try to kind of make a listing and push a little on Greg and the museum here in the future of making sure that stuff becomes available again. If nothing else, I think we should, for the rendezvous, for the raffle, make copies of some of this stuff. And then include, have a couple copies of each, a bunch of different ones, and then just make them available like in the raffle or something at the rendezvous. That would be a cool idea. So I'll have to go through and see what I got. But all the stuff that you'd be available, I'll get permission from Greg and then go do that. I'll post a Batcave photo tonight, Dallas. Yeah, it's hard to get clear photos up there because it's dark. Good night, everybody. Everybody get a good night's rest. Don't go in the Bat Cave. It's nasty. It's horrible. It's bad for your freaking health. I wouldn't even walk up to the ladder. I never touched the ladder or went to the ladder when we were filming because there was too many people kicking up too much guano dust, and that shit is horrible for your lungs and for your body. So I always tell people is do not go up in there. You've seen kind of what they filmed, the danger going up in there. If you fell, you're dead. It's just a bad place, and it's nasty. And if it's cool and it rains out, that's shit. You end up like me, burning your clothes in your pack because you got to get rid of everything. I ended up losing so much stuff because of that. Trevor just came through in flip-flops. Anyways, everybody have a good night. Thank you for the live. Thank you for the fun. We will say farewell to my friendship with Larry Hedrick. And we'll see what that does. Yeah, chances are Larry has no clue. Anyways, we're going to get out of here. Have a great rest of the week. Catch Chasing Legends on Monday. We'll be back to storytelling because I thought the earthquake story was really good. It was really a good piece of historical information concerning the Dutchman and the Superstition Mountains, and something noted in books that I needed to kind of say, hey, there's resource material. You can look into that particular thing. And it didn't do as well as other ones, so I got to get back to talking about lizard men coming out of the mountains. Oh, well, that's the way it goes sometimes. Dallas, Glenn, Robert, Larry, Steve, Scott, David, just up and down all the way through. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. We will talk to you next Friday. Have a good night. Bye.